Yo, yo, yo. This is Candy B Knittin. I'm Candy B. I be knitting. And today I want to talk about my most recent finished object. And we're just going to deep dive into a particular pattern. This is my simple sweater by Tin Can Knits. It is a top-down circular yoke construction sweater by Tin Can Knits. Once again, it retails for about $8, I believe. I donated to their, they have an app, and I donated when they were having a fundraiser, and so for $20, I got a free pattern, their new Silver Bells, the bobble sweater that they just did, and I got two vouchers or credits to purchase a pattern through the app. And so I got this for a little bit less than the retail price of the pattern, if you're doing the math of how much the average pattern cost. It's top down circular yoke. The thing, if you've not heard of Tin Can Knits, is that they provide very simple, straightforward, beginner-friendly patterns in a wide variety of gauges and sizes. So this is a top-down circular yoke, and the gauges range from a sock weight yarn all the way up to a worsted weight yarn, and it comes in 20 sizes all the way from newborn to a 70-inch bust circumference. And the gauges are 24 stitches per inch to 18 stitches per inch. I did the DK weight version. I did not gauge swatch, but I ended up getting the exact gauge of the pattern once I just measured my final gauge in order to tell you all this. So I did the DK weight pattern, and fingering weight held double. So that means the ribbing is size 4 US needles, which I think is 3.5 millimeters. And the body is done in US size 6 needles. And I got exactly, where is it? I wrote it down, 22 stitches per inch. And I think my row gauge was bang on too. The yarn I used was Knit Picks Palette, which is a fingering weight Highland non-superwash yarn from Knit Picks. It's a 2-ply fingering weight, and I held it double to get the DK weight. And that is the big and small of the bases of the pattern. Yeah, I did the size medium. I have a 38-inch bust circumference, and I wanted it to be negative to no ease. And like I said, I got exact gauge, so my finished sweater is 38 inches circumference in the body. As far as the pattern is concerned, the pattern is pretty wide open to interpretation. So it was pretty much any deviation I did from the pattern was pretty much open in the pattern. So if you are familiar with this sweater, you'll know in the actual pattern photo, it shows a child wearing the child size, and their yoke has stripes, and then the body of the sweater is solid. The pattern itself, and this is one of my very, very few, even slight criticisms of the pattern, is the reason I bought the pattern is because I found the pattern picture to be very striking with the stripes. The pattern itself isn't necessarily written for stripes. They just kind of tell you, hey, if you want to do stripes, this is how you do it. But mostly it's a vanilla top-down sweater. And so they tell you in the pattern, it's a paid for pattern, so I won't tell you the exact math, but they tell you how many rows are in the yoke, and then they tell you how to math it to do your own stripes versus how many colors you have. And so if you were looking for a pattern to tell you exactly where to start and stop your colors, this is not the pattern for that. But I did not follow their math because I knew I wanted all over stripes, and I was kind of looking for stripes of a certain size. So my stripes are 8 rows, 8 row stripes, because that's just the size. I knit. I didn't swatch for this. I didn't really plan for this. This was just a literally Christmas Day. I got some Chow interchangeable needles, and I was like, I want to make a sweater. Let me get this sweater pattern. I have a credit to the Tin Can store. Let me do this. And so I just started. I cast it on. Started with this color, and I was just like, oh, that looks like a good stripe to me. And so I just continued to knit. As far as the colors, I'm not going to go through each colors because one, I don't have the ball bands for all of these yarns, and two, it's Knit Picks palette. It's the same. Like if you could easily go on their website and see what these colors are, and I doubt anyone would want this exact replica of a sweater because this is my collection of Knit Picks palette actually. Whenever I go thrifting, I look for certain yarns, and for a long time I had this thing where I was collecting Knit Picks palette yarn, and so I had this bin of Knit Picks palette yarn. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do this with this or why. I just like this yarn. I don't know. I had never even knit with it before. I knit on one scarf out of it, which used like 3 balls of yarn. It comes in 50-gram cakes. And so I made one scarf out of it, but then the rest of it was just this collection I had. And every single time I would go thrifting, I would look for another ball of it. So I ended up with this hodgepodge of different colors. And I got these Chow for Christmas. And I just got it in my mind that I'm just going to use these yarns. And so I employed my children to randomly reach into my knitting bag and hand me a ball of yarn, or whatever ball they handed me I would use. The only stipulation I made is I wanted the sleeves to match. So side by side, the sleeves go together. I did have to do some yarn management, and so the body doesn't necessarily match the sleeves. It just kind of goes into whatever yarn I had. I got to a certain point in the body where I weighed my yarn and saw how much yarn I needed for a repeat, and then from there I decided how much yarn I had left. I could have done a better job with yarn management. I probably could have, because I stopped the body after I split for sleeves and did the sleeves first because I knew I wanted the sleeves to match, but I ended up with more yarn that I could have used for the body, and so I could have mathed it out a little bit better, basically is what I'm saying. But for something I didn't swatch for, something that I randomly cast on, and something where I let my children pick the sequence of colors, I'm pleased as punch. I wanted something kind of on the tighter side. My last sweater was the Night Nook, and that was a bit oversized, and so I wanted to get something a little bit snugger to the body. And also I feel like tight stripes are kind of like a retro vibe. Like I wanted something I could see baby Candace wearing. My kids pick the colors, but I'm also inspired by them as far as some of their fashion choices, because they tend to be pretty fearless with the colors, the textures they wear. For me, for a long time, sweaters have been like that's a way of kind of dressing up, because if I'm cold, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to put on a hoodie. If I'm going into the office or I'm going out to a nice dinner and it's cold out, then I put on a sweater. But there's something about a toddler just throwing on a knit sweater and watching TV and playing in the park and getting them dirty and having sticks in it. And my toddler the other day, she got a Grinch sweater for Christmas, and it's February now and she has not stopped wearing this Grinch sweater. And so I really wanted to kind of call back to the idea of being a child that has a favorite sweater that they can just throw on with everything, and it doesn't matter if it's hot or cold outside. It actually has been quite warm here, and that was my fault. I knew casting on a Christmas sweater in Virginia, I was gonna finish right around March, and it's springing outside. It is quite chilly in my office, so I was able to wear this at work this week, and it was pretty comfortable. I also find that what I thought I knew about wool is very different than what I'm experiencing now. I hear that wool has evolved over time, but I think wool, I think I'm going to be hot and I'm going to be itchy. But the yarns that I've been exposed to since I've started to knit, I'm just like, oh, actually wool can be quite comfortable and can actually help regulate temperature in a lot of ways. Sometimes I'll put on like a synthetic blouse and I'll be sweating, and it's just like a light blouse, but I can put on 100% wool sweater and actually feel quite temperate, And so I have come to appreciate and learn a little bit more about the properties of 100% wool. As far as the yarn is concerned, it's fine. It's Knit Picks palette. It's nothing to write home about. The only other thing is this green color is not Knit Picks palette. It is a yarn that I do not know what it is. I got it from the thrift store and I had a lot of it, so I kind of used it as an accent color. I used it on the cuffs and things like that, to kind of tie the whole thing together. It's not terrible. It has a bit of a prickle to it. I'm actually going to put it on now so that y'all can actually see it on me. It has a bit of a prickle to it, and I'm also not the most sensitive person in the world when it comes to wool. Like, I almost like a little bit of a prickle, as long as it's not like itching and I don't have any allergies or anything like that. But once I put something on, and I always layer too, I wouldn't have this like next to my skin, but once it's on and my temperature kind of regulates itself, I don't really feel it at all. If anything, probably this area, like the crook of my elbow, is the most sensitive, and I can get a little bit of a prickle there, but for the most part I wear long sleeves under most of my sweaters. As far as the pattern is concerned, like I said, they leave it pretty much wide open. They're like, if you want to do stripes, this is how you do stripes. Once you do the yoke and all the increases in the yoke, it's pretty much knit the body to however long you want it. Knit the ribbing to however long you want it. Knit the sleeves however long you want them. The pattern does give you instructions, which I like about the Tin Can Knits app. You can pick cast on the ribbing, or you can pick do the ribbing later. I did the ribbing secondary because I didn't know how I was going to do the ribbing yet. There's also, do you want to do short rows? Do you not want to do short rows? And then they take you to actual tutorials on how to do short rows. I did not do the short rows in the body because I was doing the stripes, and I didn't want, basically, if I were to do short rows, I would have like a wedge where one of the stripes was bigger than the others, and I wanted the stripes to be perfectly uniform. And so what I did do when I picked up for the collar, I did just maybe 2 short rows in the collar. So ever so slightly, the back of this collar is a little bit higher than the front. And that just keeps it from being like this on my neck. And so I have a little bit more room. And I think it's going to, over time, as I pull it and wear it different ways, it's going to kind of sit even better and better and better every time I wear it. But I just ever so slightly, there is a couple of short rows in there. I knit the body to about hip length. Usually I do a thicker ribbing, but I wanted my ribbing to kind of match my stripes. And so the body is pretty uniform. With the sleeves, they also have options. Sleeve decreases, no sleeve decreases. I did the sleeve decreases. And I did them a little bit faster than the pattern because I do like my sleeves a little bit shorter. So this is like bracelet length, but I also wanted the look of the double ribbing, and so this actual final length of the sleeve is longer than I wanted to be because I knew I was going to wear it folded down. But if ever I change my aesthetic or change my sensory issues and I want a longer sleeve, I have that option, but for the most part I'm going to wear it like this. Something I have noticed, I don't know if it's a wool thing or a tension thing, but Obviously, I documented it very carefully as I went through the pattern, did the exact amount of stripes, the exact yarn, did the exact decreases, and in all of my sweaters, my right sleeve is just a little bit shorter, and I don't know if it's because I'm right hand dominant, so my sleeve is just coming up more, or maybe I always knit my left sleeve first and then on my second sleeve my tension is changing, but I just find that to be very interesting. It doesn't bother me, but it's just something I've noticed and something that doesn't happen on my store-bought clothes. So it's just very interesting that the same exact knitter can knit two sleeves, the same exact, yarn, same exact stripes, same exact decreases, and just I can feel the difference between the two sleeves. It's just interesting to me. As far as the pattern is concerned, it's fine. It is Tin Can Knits definitely skews more towards beginner friendly. A more accomplished knitter might find this pattern to be a little bit boring because it is just a circular yoke. The boon of it is that it comes in a wide variety of sizes and gauges. So if you do a lot of knitting for other people, you can find a lot of interest there that way. As far as the beginner, I like it. It's more of like, it could be your first sweater. It could be. It does, because if you use their app, they do have the links to different pattern tutorials and different resources you can use. But I do feel like there are some little tips and tricks to knitting your first sweater that aren't in the pattern, and I would very much encourage people to do kind of research on how to properly, size yourself for a pattern. It's not gonna, like I said, a lot of the pattern is, hey, knit this as long as you want, or do this, and forever how long, and so if you're looking for a pattern to be like, I've never knit a sweater before and I just want you to tell me exactly what to do, this may not be the pattern for that. But if you've knit a couple of other things and you want to add, if you've done a bunch of raglans, for instance, and you want to add a circular rope to your a circular yoke to your repertoire, this might be the pattern for that. And then you can also play around with it. You can do short sleeves with it. Like I said, you can play around with the length of the cuff here. You can maybe add different types of stripes. I could definitely see myself amassing another pile of similar yarn and doing a different type of striping sequence. Rainbows, or black and orange, or whatever. I know also Tin Can Knits has like their strange brew pattern where you can add in color work and things like that. I recommend, I do like the app because the pattern comes in such a wide variety of options and sizes and gauges. So when you're actually working inside the app, the only thing you can see is that one size you're working on. As far as like repeats go, as far as like I said, you pick, if you're doing short, ahead of time you pick, I'm doing the short rows, I'm doing the sleeve decreases. You make all of those choices in the app, and then you can only see that rather than having a paper pattern where you're highlighting. They do email you the pattern too, so you do have access to the entire pattern, because I do like to read the entire pattern, because I like to see, hey, yes, I think I want to make the 38-inch bust, but sometimes a pattern might not have a 38-inch bust. They might have a 40-inch bust and a 36-inch bust, and I need to look at both of those sizes to see what's going to make sense for my body, or everyone's built a little differently, so you might need to do the increases for the 38-inch bust, but then, if you're a lot shorter than me, the sleeve might not work for you if you have the same size chest as me, stuff like that, where you would need to piece together different parts of the pattern, and the app doesn't necessarily allow for that. The other thing, if you are a person that's never knit a sweater before, my number one tip for someone who's never knit a sweater before is, you're gonna get to this pattern actually does it. You get to the end of the pattern and they're like, weave in your ends, sew up your armhole, your underarm holes, and block, and then you're done. And you might be reading that as a beginner knitter and being like, why are there holes in my underarm? And then the pattern just wants me to resolve that. What is going on? Like my first time knitting a raglan top, I was picking up stitches. Like usually, you knit a bunch of stitches, then you have some that are the body, some that are the sleeves. And I did the body, and I came back to pick up my sleeves, and I had these gaping holes, and I just knew I was doing something wrong. And I was counting the stitches, and the pattern told you pick up 36 stitches, and I was picking up 36 stitches, and in my heart of hearts I knew something was off, but I just did it because I was getting frustrated and I wanted to make something. And I did some research afterwards, and the research afterwards was might be a tension issue, because you're also casting on most patterns are like cast on a certain amount of underarm stitches. And so I was like, okay, maybe I didn't cast on tight enough, and I tried to like cast on tighter for underarms after that. And then finally I forget who I was watching, but I was watching a YouTube video one day, and it wasn't even about that. I was just watching YouTube knitting something totally different, and someone said, yeah, and then the holes in the underarm. I'm like, wait a minute, time out. That's a thing. And so then I actually knew to like research this thing. And you don't know what you don't know till you don't know it, because I automatically assumed there was something wrong with me. And so if you knit a sweater, you separate for your underarm, especially, I don't know, I've never done a bottom up sweater, I don't think, but most top down sweaters, you knit a bunch of stitches, you separate stitches for the sleeve, you cast on new stitches, then they have you go back to do the sleeves, and you pick up all these stitches, and you pick up extra. Yeah. I have yet to find a pattern that says, hey, if you don't want holes in your underarm, you're going to want to pick up a few extra stitches. And all you do is, and I think I'm going to share the video in the comments. I forget what's her, I forget her name at the moment, but she has a whole YouTube series about knitting your first sweater. And I've spoken about her before. But all you gotta do is pick up extra stitches. And I'm just like, as a beginner knitter, I'm so reluctant to do my own interpretation thing, but you just pick up a couple of extra stitches along, and then you resolve those stitches. So you do SSK or knit two together, whatever you need to do to get back to what the pattern wants you to have. Or you can leave it with the holes, and then you use the yarn you use to pick up the stitch. You'll have a tail there, and then you sew it up at the end. And so I'm pretty content with my underarms. I got a little bit of gaping, but I also know this is 100% non-superwash wool right in my armpit, and so it'll probably be felted very, very shortly. But definitely looks better than my first sweater that I ever made. Definitely, for sure. That's that. I definitely have jogs in my striping because I don't really care. And jog just means like a stair step when you switch colors. There are ways around that, but I actually like the look of the jogs because it reminds me that it's a handmade sweater. And also I could have, since this is non-superwash wool, I could have spliced the yarn together. You wet the ends of the yarn and rub it together. But I was also kind of concerned about if I wanted to rip back and change anything, because I really wasn't committed to this whole project until I got way far into it. And so I left my ends untucked, and I just went with the jogging of the stripes, and it was fine. I finished this probably the end of January, early February, and then I just spent the last couple of weeks every night weaving in a few ends. And yes, there are methods to weave in ends as you go, but I've kind of made peace with weaving in ends, and so it's not that much of a chore to me. I'm going to take this off because I'm hot now, and also I want to show you the wrong side. And basically when you weave in ends as you go, you kind of catch the yarn behind the stitch. And I knew that I wanted it to be pretty meticulous on the wrong side, in case I ever wanted to wear. I think this might be a look to wear inside out. And so I knew leaving the yarn ends out would give me the flexibility to kind of go in and make sure my ends were pretty invisible. And this is the back of the neck. And I don't think, you can probably see a little bit of lumpy bumpiness, but I think I did a pretty good job of weaving those in so it's not super obvious. Like if I didn't care about the wrong side, I would have had all the colors crossing over each other, but I wove in each color into its own block. And I also like the idea of leaving my ends unwoven because I was holding the yarn double. There were little spots where I wanted to, where maybe I didn't, maybe I dropped one thread, and so I had a dropped stitch in some places, and so I used my yarn ends to kind of fix those places, fix any tension issues, sew up my underarm real good. I also go back with a crochet hook and kind of any kind of weird tensioning issues that I see. Sometimes I just randomly come across a really big stitch, and I'll use my crochet hook to kind of fix that up. On the regular, if y'all recall, one of my other tips is to get really intimate with your personal measurements. And so my hand is about 6.5, 7 inches long from the tip of my middle finger to here. And so this is how long I leave my ends. And I like to be pretty generous with my ends. And I use a tapestry needle. And I kind of went diagonal across these garter bumps, or purl bumps rather. And then once I had not enough yarn to stay on the needle, then I use my crochet hook to kind of tuck in anything else. And I'm going to wear this for a while. I think it's going to be pretty seamless for a while because it's like I said, it is the Peruvian Highland non-superwash wool. So even as I was knitting, I could see the yarn kind of sticking to itself. And so I don't think I'm going to have a problem with anything coming untucked, but I like to kind of wear it for a while, let everything settle. And then if I need to go back in and clip off any ends or retuck any ends, I can do that. Yeah, I think that is all I wanted to say about this. I really enjoyed working with the Chow-Goos. I think everything people say about them is absolutely true. Knit for a while with, get a needle of this brand, that size, this size, and then don't waste a whole bunch of time. Just go ahead and commit to the Chow-Goos if you like the Chow-Goos. It made it super easy to try it on as I went. Usually I spent a lot of time putting things on waste yarn, taking them off waste yarn, and all I did was add a little extension to my cord, and I was able to try everything on as I went. I use DPNs for the sleeves. That's my preferred method. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend this pattern if you're just looking for just a simple knit, variety of sizes. The app is awesome. They kind of just go hand in hand, especially if you're knitting. I can't even imagine. I don't even think I've opened up the PDF of this pattern. I can't imagine trying to go through this pattern and figure out, where I'm at in the pattern. And so worked really, really well. I'll definitely be knitting this again because I paid for the pattern. So I'm definitely going to be knitting this again. Definitely. It's funny. I want to learn Latvian braids and tubular cast-offs, but there is something to be said about a super simple. It was a dream to knit. Just stockinette in a circle. I think raglans look the best on me. There is something kind of a little awkward about the circular yoke, but there is something very fun about knitting a circular yoke. So I could definitely see myself collecting a bunch more yarn and then just making a whole bunch of these. And that's why I wasn't even that pressed to swatch for it or anything like that, because I was just like, this is just fun meditative knitting. I do have, this is all the yarn I have left over. I do have this has 10 colors in it. I have an 11th color, but this was one of their heathered colors, and I wanted it to be kind of bold and punchy. And so I did not end up using this color. Then the rest of these are the scraps of all the other colors, along with some other Knit Picks palette that I didn't have enough to put into the sweater. There are some yarns where literally, like when I made my ranunculus, I pretty much weighed until I had like 2 grams left, and I still have that 2 grams left of Bumblebee Acres yarn, and I'll figure out what I'm gonna do with that. And then there's other yarns that this is a nice amount of yarn to have left to make something scrappy, but I feel kind of done. Like I feel like I made this sweater, I'm ready to move on and use different yarns. I might buy Knit Picks palette again in the future for a different project, but I don't feel compelled to hold on to this. Like when I first started this, I was like, oh, I can make a matching striped hat after I'm done, but I'm kind of good on that, and I'm kind of, I have a coworker, he calls it like phases of acquiring versus phases of disposition. I'm kind of more in a disposition phase with my yarn. Like I don't want to use it, or I want to put it in a place where it's gonna get used. And so I think I'm gonna probably end up donating this because I really don't feel compelled or moved or motivated to do any other project with this right now. And it doesn't mean like it's a bad yarn. It's just like it served its purpose and I'm good. Not like my shawl and a ball project, where I was like, I'm gonna make a dress and I'm gonna make a shawl, I'm gonna do this. It's like, no, I'm good. I used it. I used a lot of it, and now someone else, and I already got it secondhand in the first place, so now I can pay it forward again. This yarn, just so y'all know, this yarn usually retails for about $4.99 a ball regularly for a 50-gram ball, 100% wool, fingering weight. Sometimes you can get it for like $3.99 if they're discontinuing certain colors. At the thrift store, usually the yarn is usually $1 to $2, sometimes $3 a ball. So if you wanted an idea of how much a sweater like this might cost you. I did think that I was kind of concerned about my gauge because I thought the fabric I was creating was pretty thick. Like I felt like I could get almost a worsted weight gauge with this. So I was actually pretty surprised it was spot on. But it was interesting. I do not recommend you play it fast and loose, especially if you want to be able to use your project at the end. But I just knew, hey, if I can't fit it, someone else can. And I really enjoyed the process of knitting it. I really enjoy, it's almost like playing with my Legos as a kid. I enjoy just seeing how the colors are next to each other and what color's coming next. And so the whole process was a lot of fun. And also I feel like doing more scrappy projects activates a certain creative part of my brain where I'm just like, I wouldn't put these certain colors next to each other. Like I literally grimaced after I did this dark green, my kid brought me this red. I was like, oh, it's Christmas color. I don't want, but it works out. And I kind of like this, and this together. I could do something with that. I think my favorite is this kind of peachy orange color next to the red. I would never think that those two would go together. I ended up with this little candy corn moment right here. Now I want a whole candy corn sweater. And so it really kind of activates that part of my brain that wants to play with color and wants to figure out what things go together. And so this is a great exercise for that. Just, that's why I love scrappy projects. I love marling yarns together because colors just act differently. Like the effect of this light blue next to this light green versus the light blue next to the yellow. It's just, I'm really into this whole like color theory. I've been reading up on like optical dyeing. Just the idea of when two colors are beside each other, how they look differently, even without like mixing them together. And so it's a great exercise for that. I do still have a lot of this green left over. I'm going to keep the green because I'm seeing another ranunculus in my future. And I think I have enough to make my dream long sleeve version of the ranunculus. I did say the yarn was just a hair prickly. Like, it's Peruvian Highland wool. It softened up a lot when I washed it. And I did wash it with, I got this laundress soap that came recommended to me. I was watching the Knit Girls, and Leslie was saying that a lot of blocking formulas don't really wash wool. They don't really get it clean. And so I knew, this being secondhand yarn, like, it's one thing to knit with secondhand yarn, it's another thing to wear it against your body, to pick up your kids and hold them while you're wearing it, to put it in a closet with your other clothes. And so I knew I wanted to make sure that it was super duper clean. And so I intentionally bought, this is wool and cashmere shampoo, and it softened up a lot. It smells super, super clean. Another note, I didn't have any problem with any bleeding or the colors running on each other, and did it in the basin of my washing machine. Worked. Obviously, I didn't like use hot water or, do a lot of agitation. I just did the soaking setting on my washing machine. I have like a just fill up the basin, no agitator in my washing machine. I'm a little bummed because this is the cedar scent, and I was expecting like a really strong scent of cedar, and I like the smell of cedar. And if you don't know, cedar is a smell that is supposed to repel insects. Doesn't really have that strong of a smell to it. I smelled it. I had Mr. Rude smell it. He really couldn't smell it, and so a little bummed. But if you're a person that is sensitive to smells and doesn't like very strong smells, might I recommend the laundress soap? I'll continue to use this, obviously, because I bought a whole bottle of it, and I'm actually getting, like, usually I use like Dr. Bronner soap, or I use hair conditioner, but I am getting to the point where I am knitting a lot, and so I felt like I should invest in proper detergent for wool. Yeah, that's that. So let me know, have you used Tin Can Knits app? What do you think of it? What do you have on the needles? Are you a use the scraps until they're scrapped to the scrap person? Are you like, I never want to look at this yarn again because I did the thing with it? Let me know. Once again, I am Candy B. This has been Candy B Knittin'. You can find me at Rulude on the Instagrams. You can email me candybknittin@gmail.com. You can hit me up on the Ko-fis. Yeah, comment, like, subscribe, all of that good YouTube stuff.